Good afternoon. I'm Jane Harrison. I'm the Black and Bright Festival Director, and I'm delighted to bring you the Wright Stuff. Alexis Wright, a member of the Wanyee Nation of the Southern Highlands of the Gulf of Carpentaria, is one of our most esteemed, celebrated and awarded writers. Winner of the Miles Franklin Award in 2007 for Carpentaria and the 2018 Stella Prize for Tracker. Her work spans fiction, non-fiction and essays. Multi-themed, layered, complex, her work, no matter the genre, speaks of the interrelatedness of ideas and how they arise from country like no other. Towards the end of this session, we will have the opportunity to do Q&A with Alexis, but for now, let's hear Alexis read from her extensive and stunning oeuvre. Welcome, Alexis.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you very much, and really pleased to be here this afternoon and on this lovely day in Melbourne. Sorry I cannot be there. I'm just about chained to my desk these days, and till I get my new work finished and finalised, and just about brain dead for just about anything else right at the moment. But I'm really pleased to be able to do this, and I also want to acknowledge country that. I want to acknowledge the country that I'm on today, we're on, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and elders past, present and emerging. And it's a privilege and honour and to be on this land here, this beautiful country that we're able to live on. And I also like to acknowledge my own people in around North Queensland and in the Gulf of Carpentaria, Wanyee people, and all our associated groups in the area. I acknowledge them and pay my respects and my deep respect, because whatever I do today has come from that, and from other Aboriginal elders and people of great wisdom right across the country that we learn from continuously. Now, where do I start? This is, I have a pile of books here, and I'm just going to read a little bit for each from the various books, and we might talk about what we talk about later, Jane. And okay. First off, I want to start at the beginning, I guess. Plains Promise, which is this book, and my first novel that was published in 1997, and it's a great kind of a celebration for me. This book is now in its 25th year, and UQP have really nicely decided to put out a special edition of Plains of Promise this year. So I'm excited about that, and it's a book has stayed in print, all these years. So and feel really,
in Australia when so many books get relegated to the backlist. So congratulations.
So this is Plains Promise, and I'm reading just a small piece from part 1, and it's called The Timekeeper's Shadow. So in chapter 1, and it's about the lives of 4 generations of Aboriginal women, although the last generation is just a little girl, and it's a book that it is this I wrote, or I tried to write, and it was the start of a career, I think, in literature. The biggest tree on St. Dominic's mission for Aborigines grew next to the girls' dormitory. It was the only tree that had survived from the 21 seeds contained in a seed pod brought by the first missionary on the long and arduous trek to the clay pans expanding across the northern Gulf country. The pod was a parting gift from his niece. It served a useful purpose on a journey as a rattling pod to strike a stubborn mule on the rump in the heat of the day, or to slap monotonously across the hand at night by the campfire, whenever the boredom or loneliness became unbearable. It was also a useful game to guess how many seeds were in the pod, to keep a record without resorting to opening it, absences in praise of the Lord, until the time of celebration was right, when the destination for the work of God was reached. And this was the start of as a fictional story of the first mission in the area. So God's celebratory Ponciana tree came into being, surviving the clay pans, the droughts, and the wets, to grow large and graceful in the presence of 3 generations of black girls, laughing in their innocence as if nothing mattered at all. Its roots clung tighter to the earth when the girls cried out for their mothers, or wept into its branches when they were lonely or hurt, enduring the frustration and cruelty of their times. The tree grew in spite of all this, healthy and unexploited, unaffected when illness fell on all sides, witnessing the frequent occurrences of premature deaths, none of which affected the growth of God's tree. Now, the Black Crow. I'll go to the second part now that I wanted to read from, and that was chapter 2. And I'm just talking a bit about the life of what was happening on this mission, and it was in a really nice place, and a lot of places were like this across the country. This is up north. So up north, the clouds of night split fast at dawn, a dark red dawn that crawls with increasing brightness over fresh green growth, breaking through the burnt stubble roots of a clay pan fire, a clay pan covered in cobwebs and cobweb mist. And here they come, through the track that splits the stubble, a track packed down hard from travelling feet. The so-called mindless ones walk on. They walk on the cutting edge between reality and beyond, placing new footsteps in the thin layer of moist earth. They come separately, about 5 or 6 old ones, taking their routine walk. No one cuts the white matted hair on head or face. Their long limbs of dry, sagging black skin are covered with dirt. They are naked. They chew tobacco in its moist little lump behind the left ear, or rolling in mouths with clicking tongues. Except for old Eddie, who pushes bicycle handlebars attached to a pole fixed on bicycle wheels. They walk unaided. Their faces are mapped by the deep gorges of great wisdom and knowledge of their traditional homelands. Their eyes stare downwards in an earth eagerly expecting their return. They have nothing to say to one another about their institutionalized life. The old ones gave up talking about it long ago. They move in silence along the track. Others stare after them as they go past. What are they doing? Wandering around with their dogs. No one goes to get them. The old ones themselves wander. When they reach their destination, they sit separately and sniff the freshness of cut grass. They are prepared to wait. After all, everyone waits for something to happen sometime, sooner or later, don't they? Errol Jip is the missionary, the person in charge here. Errol Jip sweats as he pushes the rotary mower up and down, concentrating his glare on the spinning blades as the grass flies in a buzz of emerald jewels. He is sick and tired of telling them. He's determined to stop himself glancing up to the open ground around the corrugated iron shed that serves as a ration outlet. He's angry. They are sitting there in the dirt, in the heat. He always do. They always do it. Sit there in the sun for nothing. He continues to mow Beverly's lawn, faster and faster. Nothing will stop him. Red-faced with exhaustion, he tries not to notice the old man, but he does. Errol Jit's God keeps willing him to help the old ones. He knows selfishness is a sin. He feels obligated to tell them to go home. He knows Beverly is watching him through the white latticework of the upstairs veranda of their house, and she is on the side of God, but he won't go yet. He is sick of telling them. Let them sit there. Angrily, he stays on his side of the dust bowl and mows on. They sit quietly, separately, until midday. And then they get up and walk back over to the scorched, dusty track. Empty-handed, independence intact. Another successful protest against white man's time. Every Sunday morning, the ration station is closed for the weekend. Errol Jit mows Beverly's lawn because he must. Beverly is his wife, and he ought to try to keep her happy. If mowing a lawn makes her happy, it's the least he can do. Errol Jit is a man for the main chance. And that's a little bit from Plains of Promise, and that's a long time ago. But we all came from a recent history like that. And the next book.
Sorry, do you want to talk about each book as we go, or would you prefer to just read from them and we'll have questions at the end?
Maybe I'll go through it all first, Jane, and yeah, otherwise we might get bogged down and I won't finish something. Yeah. All right. So anyway, this is Grog War, and that's the special edition that they put out this year or last year, and making it look smarter, and it's really good. So I'm happy about that. Grog War is a book that Jalala Curry Council in Tennant Creek asked me to write for them, and they wanted the book written in 8 months, and I've never done a book like that again. But I did it. I actually did it in 8 months, and it was a lot of work. It was I had to go through a lot of research. It was just piles and piles of transcripts and reports and documents, and also they didn't want me. They've really specific how they wanted the book to be, or more specific about how they didn't want the book to look, and so it was a great working opportunity to work with the Warramunga people in Tennant Creek and the town camps, and the people there were just wonderful to me, and they took me all around the country in Tennant Creek, and I appreciate that time again to this day. It was just a wonderful place to be, in terms of looking at country and being taught about country in around Tennant Creek, and you just see it just at such a different light, and it was beautiful, but it was hard. There's a whole business of grog in Tennant Creek was a hard business, and they took 10 years of a constant battle to try and bring some restrictions into Tennant Creek about the excessive amount of alcohol that was sold there, and in a really callous and cruel way, because you go there and you just see what was happening to people's lives. To me, you just would not have the heart to sell any more grog. You just wouldn't have the heart to do it. Anyway, so Heart of Gold. And reading from just a little bit from that section called Heart of Gold, and there's a little few lines there by Jim Downing just underneath there that I inserted, which he said in 1973. I've heard white people say cynically, we couldn't clean them up with poison and guns, but you watch, we'll do it with grog. So there are nights like no other in the arid landscape of Tennant Creek, a place where more stars than you could see anywhere on Earth shine across the sky so brightly and so close, where you could imagine that if you looked up long enough, you could reach up to the heaven, and the leaves of the conkerberry and the wild orange glow from the moon moving towards the western horizon. The light from so far away strikes the trunks of the bloodwood and the turpentine to find the soft hues of grey and white and brown. Your eyes can be guided by trails of ants endlessly on the move over the warm earth of red soil on the banks of silent creeks, laden with turfs of dry Mitchell Plains grasses. In amongst the tussock and hammock grass plain outside Tennant Creek is the camp of old Giacomo Mickey Nothing. His camp consists of pieces of the surrounding bush and bits of corrugated iron, just about level with the tips of the fresh spinifex spears. Whenever the humbug of grog catches up with him, he can just disappear just like that. They say that this old man can be here one minute and you look again and he is gone the next. His camp is in the open for warmth. He can look out in any direction while a light breeze slides over the grass tops to offer him warmth for as long as the sun shines during the winter months. I've always been a bushman, and all my life I have lived in the bush, Mickey Nothing explained. He cares little about the commerce of money and the whitefellow law of Tennant Creek. He saw how all that came and plonked itself on his country. Old men like Giacomo come from a strong law, from the land where he sits, as it has always been, where law is learned, where he is highly respected and being one of the important men in traditional law all around these parts of the country. In the rocky hills surrounding the outskirts of Tennant Creek live the old people. These are the spirits ancestors of the Warramunga people, whose traditional lands include Tennant Creek. Sometimes they are seen walking around these hills. It is believed the old people come into town when they are upset and chase the traditional owners. The Warramunga believe that when the ground is broken, as in the case of the building of the Marianne Dam, which was done without consultation with them, many Aboriginal people die. Or when the town council moved one of the pebbles from a sacred site, a nest of eggs of the Dreamtime serpent, for a monument in town, many Aboriginal children were bitten by snakes. Mining is no good, Kathleen Numpajunka Fit said. Nanga is a senior lady and one of the main traditional owners of Tennant Creek. She's also a main number one woman singer for a traditional country. It's no good for digging holes for kids because they get sores. There was nothing first. This is what happened when they started Pico Gold Mine. It was really bad. All the kids had sores in those days when the gold rush was on. The old people didn't tell them all. It is believed that there might be a link between the detrimental use of grog as an instrument of harm to Warramunga and the desecration of the resting places of their traditional ancestors by the Populungi white people. And it goes on. And it's still a problem in Tennant Creek.
Thank you.
Even though they did so well to get some restrictions, but as soon as they got them in, there were so much action to try to undermine those restrictions, which was to do some good in the town and for people who really needed it. So it's a hard struggle in our world for whatever we want to do, and it continues. So Take Power was another book at that time. I was really prolific in those days. Was Plains of Promise and Grog War and Take Power in 2 years. Were published in 2 years. So, it took a little bit longer than that to write it. And the Take Power was a book that I compiled and edited for the Central Land Council. It was a celebration of the first 25 years of land rights in Central Australia, or a commemoration. But it's a book that I really enjoyed doing as well. It's because I collected stories from people from all over Central Australia, and I had the opportunity to go to, the big land council meetings that were out in country, out in, really isolated places. And, I was working with Tracker at that stage, did the Tracker book, and we'll come to that. But Tracker was, he didn't even introduce me to all these people. And but I had to go after the meeting and try and get, to get stories for the book. And so I just would be roaming around with, a torch in the night, going to different people's camps and seeing that wanted to have, tell a story for the book. And a lot of people did. And the book also, and that was a real joy. And there was just some really important stories in this book, and some really funny stories. And one old man, he is a really important lawman. He was quite fearful, really, to me anyway, and to a lot of people, because he was a really, he was a very powerful man. And he said, "Yes, I'll tell you a story." And he put the tape in the tape recorder, and he told the story in 40 minutes, and what he wanted to tell me. And I didn't understand a word because it was all in Warlpiri. And I said, "I will send you a tape copy back. And when I go back to Alice Springs," he says, no, we'll make another tape right now." And he had a tape in his swag, and he said, "Put this in the tape recorder," and I did. And he told the same story exactly, and it took exactly 40 minutes, and it was the exact copy of the story he told once. He told it twice, so it was, but it was it's in this book here. But all I wanted to say is, and this one old man, and a lot of these people have passed away now, so I should be mentioning many names, but he was a man, a beautiful old man, from one of the communities up there in Central Australia, and he loved birds. I love birds. And he's just had a little piece, and keeping the country company. "I sometimes like birds," he said. "Some gone, birds gone away from me too, running away somewhere. I like them. I like them ones with the red wings. We save them for someone to give them away. I had one cocky, that white cocky, but he's gone somewhere again. They might have hit him with a Shanghai, or I don't know, never know. Yet I don't like eagle, too cheeky. He might kill bird, or kangaroo, or something like that. That is why I don't like to get him eagle. All the young fellas can climb up the trees and get him, not me. I'm too old now. I might fall down. I have liked birds since I was a little boy. My grandson go about and get some for me. All the birds now. They always get them for me. I feed them with the damper, and sometimes with the wheat-becks, and sometimes with that little rice. I get them rice from the store. I keep birds because they keep the country company." And I just love that. And I know it's another book. story in here, but it's too hard to find it now. And about making rain. And this is so many incredible stories in this book. And it's a book that should be read by more people, I think. And I think we would put it out in a time we didn't, really know how to, sell it or market it. And it's a really important book, I think, with the sort of stories that are in there. And it's just beautiful. But I'll move on to Carpentaria. I was going to read a little piece, but I don't think we'll have time. And that's Carpentaria, and it's had a big journey, and took me on a big journey when it won awards and that initially, and it kept me going for about 3 years, I think, and and people just wanted me to go all over the world and talk about this book, and in the end, I just thought I can't do that anymore. I just it's every book to carry around anyway. So, yeah, and so it's and it keeps on doing things. It's always remains in print, and it does its work, and that's good. And but I decided I had to move on, and the book can go and do its own work. I'm finished. I have to move on, and so I did. And but I was going to this last year. It got selected in France for the French aggregation, which is a really rigid exam for academics who want to in France who want to be able to teach in English. They have to take a really year-long rigid examination, and academics, it's a different system to what it is in Australia, where they more or less, I think, public servants. And if they want to move up the line to be able to do this, they have to do that exam. And so, and so over 1,000 people do this exam each year. And so last year, Carpentaria got selected by the French Ministry of Education to as a set text. So it was a set text with Shakespeare and Henry James, 3 set texts for people who are already academics, and it was also on the set text list for external examination for people who got PhDs and who want to become academics. And so they had an exam just recently. I think it's the first of their exams. I can't remember what it was called, but it's a 6-hour exam, and they chose. They chose. And I was going to read the part that they chose for this exam, and it just came up, and that was what they had to write on this particular excerpt from Carpentaria. 6-hour exam. Okay, I'll have to ask her about that. But how do you do that? I can't imagine. So, but I wanted to read. No, I won't read that section, but it's part of this chapter anyway on enormous responsibility, and it's. I don't know if I should explain Carpentaria at all, Jane.
I think just give us a slight overview for those of us who haven't read the text.
Well, Carpentaria is set up the homeland, the Gulf of Carpentaria, and it was a book that I wanted to write, and it came after the development of Century Mine on our traditional lands, on pristine lands in the Gulf, and a lot of people up there, and tried to help us, what I could, but a lot of other, my countrymen and women up there, really strong people, they fought a big fight, to try to stop this mining from happening. And and there were arguments on, all sides, amongst ourselves, and also, big arguments with the federal government, state government, local government, the miners, and everybody who wanted to, try to tell Wanyi and the other groups up in the Gulf what to do, and everyone had the answer except and not wanting to hear what our answer was. So the mine did go ahead, and it was just despicable, the whole business at the time, and it hurt a lot of people, and it took a long time for people to get over. And I don't know if people really did get over what happened there. So I wanted to write a book about mining, and as part of it, but I really wanted to write a book that celebrated who we are as people and our strengths, and what country means, and so this is the book that eventuated in the end, and it took a long time to write. It took 6 years, 2 years before that, to even think about how to do it, and I think also to come to terms with what did happen there. I knew I couldn't write a non-fiction book or a book that basically told the truth, because I think I was too close to it, and I would have had to name a whole lot of names, and you have to be really careful. I didn't have that sort of skills of an investigative journalist to do it and be able to get away with it. But in a way, I think doing fiction and as a celebration of who we are, and also I wanted to be as authentic as I possibly could make the book, as to who we are as people, and in every way, and country. And I think doing it that way was the better way in the end, because it's a book that was able to live on, and I think it was a non-fiction book. It wouldn't have survived that long at all. It would have been good for academic study or something like that, but not as a general book for people to read. And and I wanted to get as many people as possible to be able to read, about who we are as people. So, and so I had to learn also a lot, because these people, the main characters in the book, particularly Norm Phantom, he's a great fisherman. He knows the sea back to front. I get sick when I'm on a boat for 5 minutes, and but so I had to learn a lot to be able to to write those characters in this book, and so you do the best you can. And I remember when the book was published, I thought, I'm not too sure, maybe this could have been done differently, or you really worry. And a great friend of mine, Bruce Sims, who did a structural edit on the book initially, I rang him up and talked to him, and he just said, "Lexus, it is what it is." I said, "Yes, of course, it is what it is." So I never worried about it from that day onwards. So anyway, Norm Phantom, as I said, he's a great fisherman. He can go out and see and for months, and just be alone out in the sea, and he'll come back when he wants to. And he's taking his best friend, who is a non-Indigenous man who just turned up out of the sea one time at this place called Desperat's, and very suspicious circumstances. Elias was killed, and he will, and Norm was trying to take his body back to the sea, into a place where he thinks he should take him, to the place where gropers grope a hole in the sea, and it's quite a journey. And anyway, I'm just reading a small part from the book. Um, More was the pity, the old fisherman at Desperance would say, to find a fisherman at sea acting like a gambler, losing the game after he had become too greedy for fish. Sad loss for the sort of person who had lost track of the end of the day. You hear of the ones addicted to fishing who could not leave the fishing hole and not knowing when enough was enough. These fish gamblers never knew when to stop. Well, it was the truth of the matter. The story goes that some doomed men become lost in a sea boiling with dense schools of large fish, like salmon on the run, baiting the bait schools. So they followed the dark patches like clouds in the water. It was the worst kind of fever, following fish night and day for days, pulling fish in, throwing them on the pile, stacking up more and more. By the time their overloaded boat sunk, even the birds that had become fat. They sank with their boats, craving with their whole heart and soul the odour of rotting fish gut. There has never been some fish gambling. There have been some fish gambling survivors. You got to pity them. The ones you see hanging around Desperance with that funny, faraway look on their face, like a stuffed mullet. They stood around looking like flea-bitten dogs, running from corner to corner, hiding behind fences and other people's yards, escaping from no one because they think that someone was trying to stop them heading back to sea. It was hardly surprising to see their crying and gnashing families rushing up and down the Shire Council roads, swinging around their long sticks, trying to chase their crazed relatives away from the boats. Do not feel pity when you see a family flogging the fish gambler half unconscious. Don't waste your breath calling the government, who owns all the essential services like social welfare in cities down south. No one can shake the magnetic forces put in a fisherman's skull by the sea woman. Caught in the spear of the sea lady, Norm saw over the distance ghostly dark waves moving like haunted spirits. In the air, he heard a melancholy swishing monologue, humming and drumming the advance of the front, moving helter-skelter towards him, while up in the skies, its spiral disappeared into the heavens. Norm centre stage prepared himself, for he was a brave man and he was warrior-like, in readiness to face her army of mourning ladies. He remembered the old people watching these clouds from the long grass along the shores of Desperance and turning away. They always asked the same old question. Say, do you know who they are, boy? Yes, Norm. Norm knew the widows. They belonged to the lifelong premonition, one which linked his destiny with and theirs, the eternity of the disappointed dead, travelling in the seasonal storms of the summer monsoon. Watching these clouds in their haphazard race around the skies, he saw their glorious watery costumes of morning colours, lined with silver sprays that looked like torn lace, decorated with little unstitched pearls. Each widow rose to wail in majestic heights, showering him with the fiery froth, and they tore forward with the faster north-west winds. The haunted spectres loomed higher and higher into the skies until they could no longer hold their dignified pose and collapsed down on themselves with a spectacular and extravagant chain of lightning and thunder above his head. Norm applauded. Bravo! He called appreciatively to each dramatic gesture. Salty tears poured from his wind-swept eyes. Each flawless performance made space on the celestial stage for a throng of others, each as large and a foreboding as the other, and with much power, and with as much power to whip up even more exciting winds. I might leave that at there, Jane, because Mhm. And just keep moving on. I was going to read a little bit more there, but I think might just keep going now, eh?
Thank you. Extraordinary so far. Well, you've taken us on journeys of great place and weather and atmosphere and the minutiae of country, the ants, the trails, the textures. So it's, yeah, we're lapping it up here, Alexis. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. You're very kind. Okay. So the next book I wanted to read from us is the Swan book. It's just a small piece from the Swan book. That's the Australian cover of this book. And the Swan book is what I try and do, I think, with my work is, I take risks, and I'm not always sure what I'm doing at the time. I am sure in my own mind. I don't really discuss my work while I'm doing it, and but it's a kind of leap of faith in believing that you can pull something off in the end, and to try to structure it, which I always thought of it as it's like an engineering feat, and to write a book, and to figure out how to bring it all together, and to keep it going. And sometimes it feels like a rickety, you're building some sort of rickety building. You don't really have the skills of a fine engineer, and to build a massive 20-story building. And but that's what writing a book feels like. Is that you're building something like that, and you're trying to keep it together before it all topples over, and hopefully it doesn't. So this one book is a book that's come out of the love of swans, and I did a lot of research on swans before I was writing this book, and I still enjoy swans as I do a lot of other creatures in a while. So, and it was a book about a great concern I have about global warming, climate change, and when I started thinking about writing this type of book, was way back in 2000, 2001, 2002, and there was a lot of denial about global warming, particularly from our governments. They still do, and but even worse than. And so I was going to take a risk to write a book that I thought maybe nobody will read, and but it just seemed like an important thing to do. And I was asking the question, which I thought millions of people across the world must have been asking themselves, what's the future? Where are we going? And so I read this book and tried to put it into 100 years ahead of time, and also at the same time we were going through the Howard years with the intervention on emergency intervention into the lives of Aboriginal people in the Northern Territory, and it was just despicable and awful. Well, what happened, and it still happened, and what came of all that, and without even thinking about the millions and millions of dollars that was wasted, that could have been put into something that actually Aboriginal people in the Northern Territory actually wanted. Like some of the people that I work with in Central Australia are all really senior, people who have major responsibility for country and people. And they were talking about Aboriginal self-government. And God, can imagine if all that money had been put into something like that and turned that whole Northern Territory business around. That would have been just quite something. It would have been quite something for this country. So I was also thinking at the time of writing this book and what was happening then. you know, if we keep going in this backward way, what's going to happen to us as people? And I was thinking, you know, what would the last Aboriginal person standing be like? And so out of that came this book. And so I'm going to read from Dust Cycle, one of the first chapters in the book. And it's a book that tells the story of all this, of what happens to this young woman, and swans, and Aboriginal ideas of Aboriginal government, and the world. So, Dust Cycle. And this is a small little extract from Benjo Patterson's poem about swans. And I hear the clank of the leader crying to the lagging mate in the rearward flying. Such a beautiful poem. When the world changed, people were different. Towns closed, cities were boarded up, communities abandoned, their governments collapsed. They seemed to have no qualms that were obvious to you or me about walking away from what they called a useless pile of rubbish and never looking back. Mother Nature, no. Who knows how many hearts she could rip out? She never got tired of it. Who knows where on earth you would find your heart again? People on the road called her the mother catastrophe of flood, fire, drought, and blizzard. These were the 4 seasons which she threw around the world whenever she liked. In every neck of the woods, people walked in the imagination of doomsayers and talked the language of extinction. They talked about surviving a continuous dust storm under the old rain shadow, and they talked about living out the best years of their lives with floods lapping around their bellies, and they talked about tsunamis and dealing with nuclear fallout on their shores and fields forever. Elsewhere on the planet, people didn't talk much at all while crawling through blizzards to save themselves from being buried alive in snow. You could bet your life on it. They hardly talked while all around the world, governments fell as quickly as they rose in one extinction event after another. You be the judge, believe it or not. Ignorance, fatuous, foolish fire. That's you, Oblivion. You were just like that old Rip Van Winkle fellow of the fairy tale time. They were always calling out to him, "Wake up, coma man." That man who slept like a log, more than an old dog, and kept on sleeping for as many years that when he woke up, he went home, his house was gone, just shrub there, and nobody knew who he was anymore. He was empty, like a mystery man. Nobody remembered him. He could have been anyone. They kept poking him in his bony ribs, wanting to know, who do you reckon you are? What his name was, and why he kept saying that his house had disappeared and all that. It was very hard to lose a house. Why would anyone want to do that? So bloody good job, serve him right. You should always know where to find your own home. It was there. That was what the Rip Van Winkle man was saying. He was just like you for making up stories like that, Oblivion. Nobody liked him either.
Swan book. Now, we seem to only have about 10 minutes left, and so we haven't heard from your latest book, Tracker. So can we have a short excerpt from that?
Yes, yeah, let's do it.
Have some questions from the audience as well.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Let's see, where's that? Goodness gracious, Tracker. And then this is Tracker talking, and he's taking this section is called the Walpurgis Invasion of Europe. And Tracker is taking Walpurgis men and women to Geneva. This is him talking. He's one of the most funniest people you could ever meet. The best story is the Walpurgis Invasion of Europe. When we went to the UN, I went to the United Nations originally and said, this is all wonderful, but it is really a talk fest where the Australian government gets up and tells people how good they treat the blacks. When you compare that to Africa or South America, we're way out in front in terms of money and spending and treatment. The Australian government, kept doing this. I said to Michael Dodson, we got to outthink this process. That was always Tracker, outthinking the process. I said, we need to bring a bit of culture. So I said, I'm going to bring dot painters and all that so they can paint in the UN. When you go to the UN, no one is allowed to bring anything political because no state is to be upset or whatever. So we bought it all. We got the Walpurgis lined up, old Rastas, old Roy, old Topsy, all their mob. They're all finished now. And Jackamara and got on the plane. First, we go to Alice Springs. Someone asked them, where are you mob going? They said, we're going to Chinipa. They had them little football bags full of a couple of shirts. That's what they're going to take to Geneva. So we had to go down and get them some cases and clothes from Vinnie's. And we loaded them all up and got them attired properly, Jackamara and everybody else. Anyway, they got on the plane to go to Darwin, and that was fucking freaky for them to be going to on this big plane to Darwin to go to Singapore. I did not really tell them where they were going. No. They thought they were just going over there. It would have been wasted showing them a globe and saying, you are actually going to go around here. Where's that? And what's that? I declined to inform them, wasting my time and theirs in understanding exactly where I'm taking you. Just turn up. So the Tennant Creek mob rang me and said they wanted to know where Geneva is. I said, don't tell them. Anyway, I might leave that because, you know, I was going to read a little section from there, but I've been running out of time because we talked about that.
An incredible work of scholarship. Thank you. It's been a wonderful insight into your extensive and diverse range of books. How do you go from fiction to non-fiction to how do you decide which book is going to capture your years of scholarship next?
I don't know how to answer that, but it's a big part of is what comes from responsibility, a sense of responsibility that I think we've all inherited, a deep sense of responsibility to our own people, and I remember a very long time ago, when I was working in Karma, the Aboriginal Media Association in Central Australia, and it was always taught to us by we were quite young, and I had no idea how to run work a radio studio, and I got taught by a man called Shorty O'Neill one night because he was working on the part of the management there, and we all said, if you got a job here, anyone had a job, you had to put in time, extra, you had to give back, and giving back was to run the radio station all night because as volunteers to keep everybody happy, people out and around town, and stop people from fighting and arguing and trying to give people a better time. So we were doing things like that. We're working all night, and so So that's about it. I think it's part of giving back. There's also, you know, I love what I do. I love, you know, I love people, you know, and certain people, you know, who, you know, I have enormous respect for, and so I give people, you know, I try to, if I can, you know, produce a book, you know, and I really like the idea of our own storytelling and the stories, you know, to listen to someone like Tracker talk, and you could listen to him, you know, and we did listen to him for hours, and he could keep going for hours, and I'm really inspired by all that, and I think that's phenomenal. You know, someone can just keep on talking. I'm not a great talker myself, and I just listen to people, and that's where, you know, that's where the writing comes from. You know, I rather write than sitting around talking, and but you know, I'm fascinated with, you know, I can hear people talking. Going to say next? What are they going to say next? And they just keep going. And he would go. He could crack jokes, you know, just all the time. And that was the funny thing about, you know, just even doing that book, when I talked to so many different people, and I'd say to them, you know, tell me some of the funny stories, you know, Tracker would tell, and there'd been so many they could remember one, and it's just because it was phenomenal to hear that many stories, you know, it's just going on and on and on. So, so I do a bit of both, and I like fiction. I think fiction is a good way to tell stories, and it tests my. I like to be challenged. You know, I like to test myself, and to see it. You know, how far I can take something, and ask my publisher, he'll tell you. But
Acts of engineering that you achieve, and you're building as you go along, and you're scaffolding off your previous work, and covering some of the greatest themes that this country needs to be thinking about and talking about: climate, land rights, how Aboriginal people are treated, the intervention. I could go on and on, but I really want to make sure that I get to the audience and some questions. Do we have any questions for Alexis? Well, we have this extraordinary opportunity.
Hi Alexis, it's Mary here.
I'm Mary.
That was incredible. I'm just wondering, when you were reading all the stories out there, what determines your writing day? So when you're in story, like you must be when you're writing it, is it the clock that determines when you're writing, or how do you go about your day, I guess, when you're writing?
I think in a nutshell, sometimes I think it's trying to find the time to actually write, and that's part of the problem is grabbing time, and but I can write anywhere, and as soon as I can get to the writing itself, I will sit there for hours, and keep going. So there's no time, you know, that I say that I can only write at this particular time. I could write any time. I could write all night, but I can't do the night, you know, the night times like I used to be able to do. I think I have to look after myself a little bit better these days, but that's probably the best time to write, because I like the quiet time. I like it to be quiet. But in saying that, also, being by yourself a lot in writing, it can be quite lonely, and I also, you know, like to hear something, and I listen to music, and it's got to be the right sort of music, and or else it can be, you know, right over the top music, but usually it's quiet music that'll be on the radio, or something that I'll play. that will keep me going, and so that takes the edge away. That's you're
Now the clock's telling me time's up, but since I'm festival director, I'm going to break the rules. Is there any other questions out there? A couple of hands. Let's make them quick if we can.
I've got a microphone here, so I'll just... Is that all right?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Alexis. That was an absolutely fantastic reading of and bits and pieces of your work. And I am in awe of the fact that you can hold in your head such huge books each time and make sense of them as they go and get them down on written out. And also the fact that you are giving us, your readers, an insight into the multi-layered parts of the Aboriginal community, which is invaluable for us to come to some understanding. So my question is, as you've got older, are you finding it more difficult to do that? Are you having to take longer when you're writing, or are you able to maintain that pace as you've always done?
I think I'm still maintaining the pace. I think I've kind of an enormous appetite for this, and it grows more and more, and I'm on an endless search for finding out more about something, and I've got books to write. I've got this new one that's it's taken time. I think I put more time in now, and I'm more relaxed about that too. I've learned over the years that the more time you can put into something, the more the added value you put in, you give to the book, rather than to try and rush it. So I don't panic about that, that, I must get this book out, I must have this, and it'll be ready when it's ready. And but my publisher, I've shown him the new manuscript, and he says, I've more than delivered, and so he doesn't feel that I've lost any power or oomph or whatever that in whatever I try to do. So that's good.
Do we have one quick question? Yes.
Thank you, Alexis, for this afternoon, for your readings and for your writing, for your readings today, and for the little stories you gave us around each one of your titles. My question's about your sense of having a reader each time you write and publish. And given all these years now that you've been publishing, I'm wondering whether that sense of your reader has remained the same or changed in any way.
I might disappoint you. I hardly ever think of a reader, and I think I'm the reader, and I'm the cruel one, and so I will rework whatever I'm doing, and I'm the big critic here, and so I'm really, I'm writing for myself in a way, because I'm testing I'm testing what I can do, and I want it to, be as good as I can possibly get it. So, and it really is, and because it's so intense, it's virtually me and the page really, and then trying to get it as good as I possibly can. But maybe I should be thinking of a reader. It would be nice if I was thinking of a reader, but
winning formula, so I think continue what you're doing.
That might be just too, it might be just too confusing because which reader? um, hmm,
We probably need to finish
Thanks,
there.
Mark.
I'm getting signals from the room. Sorry?
I had a comment. It's Sonia Cooper.
Yes.
For you, Jane, I am Yorta Yorta, and I live not in a house but in the bush. And last year was the first time that I saw the black swans return to country. So I've been witnessing them, and I've got lots of video of them. And I know that when I whistle to them, they come to me. So there's 27 of them, and I have lots of videos of that. And so it's beautiful to see the black swan.
Yes.
I think the way the whitefellas looked at it for 1,500 years, so they say, that it was an imaginary, image of the black swan, but it is indeed a true image.
Yes.
And it's a totem for a lot of the mob too. So I just wanted to tell you about the black swans came back 2 weeks ago. So I've been observing them in the Barmer bush, and it's really good. They like to swim up. So what they do is they swim against the current, and then they come back again. It's like a little slide. So they have fun. But because they have a particular whistle, if you whistle, they will come. So I just wanted to let you know my experience out there.
On country.
On country.
Thank you, Sonia. And with that, Alexis, can I ask the audience to join with me in thanking Alexis for her extraordinary collection of books that enriches us all as readers. So thank you, Alexis.
Thanks, Jane. Thanks everybody for listening. And hope you have a good afternoon there and have an enjoyable time and go down the moat and have a cup of coffee and all that. Yeah. Okay.
It's night, so.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Okay. See you now. Bye.